Okay, interview time. I've got some amazing prepared questions for you guys. So, Natasha, what was your inspiration for this book on AlphaZero called Gamechanger, which is our backdrop?
Gamechanger was, we saw the games released from AlphaZero and Stockfish, and that was at the end of 2017. And they were fabulous games. And it was the first time that an AI had taught itself how to play chess. So we knew it was going to be really fascinating. And we had previously written a book together. So Matthew and I had written the book called Chess for Life. And we'd been talking about perhaps sometime writing another book, and maybe it would be to do with chess computers and how to use chess computers. And then these games came out. So we had the idea, why don't we write a book about this? And we both knew Demis Hassabis, who's the CEO of DeepMind, and DeepMind built AlphaZero. And we said, shall we approach Demis? And you were a bit nervous, weren't you, about approaching Demis? And I was like, shall we approach him? And I was like, no, we've got to do this thing. And so we gave him our Chess for Life book, and he went away and read it, and he said, I can't guarantee yet whether you can write a book on AlphaZero, but he liked the idea. And actually it fit in quite well with his plans as well, because DeepMind were building AlphaZero not really just to play chess. It was it played chess and Go and shogi, and it was looking more in general, and they were looking how to use those techniques to solve other problems. And what he wanted to do was kind of help people and make it interesting. And so a book would mean that we could explain how the chess concepts that AlphaZero came up with could then be used in our own games, and so it'd be very interesting for the chess community, and also show how people can learn from an AI and work with an AI. And so actually for him that was also a very good idea, and so we were very happy when he came back and said, yeah, do go ahead.
Yes, on that point, because I once asked Ruse and the Kogan, this was on the way to Gibraltar, I said, do you have any general principles of chess? And he just basically said, oh, you just play the position. I didn't find that very helpful. I prefer I prefer stuff in Nimzovich, my system, overprotection, blockade, things that I can sort of, almost drop into my game. So Form Pawn was another one from Leela. That's why I found each game, one of my favourite books was Chernev's Most Instructive Games of Chess. And I noticed you mentioned in one of your videos, when you sometimes see a new theme, that sort of, you remember that theme for other games.
That's right.
That was for me like that instructive games of chess and Leela games. There's these themes which you feel you can plug and play into your games.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that was the thing that was so overwhelming about the games, because when we went to see the games, first of all, I had sort of a match in the TCC between something like Stockfish and Houdini, for example, in my head, where there's a couple of unbelievable games, but there's also a huge amount of games where you sort of say, well, I didn't really need to see those, really, they're not really that interesting. And but it was game after game after game, and games where you sort of thought, but hey, I could almost play like that, I could really, I can do that, I can feel what the machine is trying to do, and that was what made it so so overwhelming. Just really playing through those games was a huge pleasure, and that was beyond anything I'd expected. It's it's really, and I mean, you see the same with Leela. You have these big, you can play through a game, you can just say, oh, there's 3 or 4 things that I'd really like to take out and play in my own game. And I suppose now I was sort of thinking about because one of the things that we had, it was sort of a mixture, I suppose, of recognition and discovery, because there's a lot of things that AlphaZero and Leela do where you sort of say, oh, that reminds me of stuff that great players have done.
Yeah, I really like that historical perspective. I've never even thought of that. When I'm analysing this, I don't sort of try and find that. I found that a really amazing part of your book, the historical cultural perspective, and distinguishing the new concepts as well. I mean, we were really, when we thought of it, we were really happy, because that was something, you really get triggered about that. But then on the other side, there's the thing where you're looking at the games, of AlphaZero or Leela, and you're saying, wow, can they really do that? I mean, it's I know the theme, but
can you do it here? And
because it's like discovering human knowledge again for itself from scratch. So if you see it in those historical games, it's like, yeah, it is thinking along the same lines.
Yeah.
But then it develops it further, and so it might put two different plans together, or develop the position some more, or break some of the rules that we've come up with.
And also I find the tradition of classical alpha beta engines, they're always trying to find the absolute best move in the position. And I've always thought, people get coaches because they don't necessarily need the technical scientific move. They need positions which are easier to play, and Leela finds resources to make positions easier to play, like form pawns, or this tying. It makes it the attack easier to play. This easier to play is emphasised, I find.
Yeah.
Rather than the clinical, what is the absolute best move in the position.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that strange enough, the way that Leela, AlphaZero, that these machines are built, it fits the human way of thinking about games and about chess and about strategy. It fits very well, looking for and also in practical terms, looking for a promising position, a position with lots of options where when you're closer to the end position, you can choose the right one. I mean, it fits beautifully, really, and it's all these things actually that when you think about it, you think wow, who could have thought of that somehow?
It's kind of choosing lines where, sort of on the balance of probability, it's going to be a good line to play. And I find it quite amazing that it's a good line for the computer to play, but it actually feels like it's a good line for the human to play as well. So because like the thorn pawns, like you say, where you don't need to work out the strategy right to the end, but since it's there, you've got all these extra possibilities, and that's why it's so much easier for you to play.
Yeah, and I think some of the wins against Stockfish, when it was put on the edge, there's zeros, but there are zeros that are harder to play to keep that zero, and sometimes it broke through that. And proved,
Yeah, I mean, I think what you saw with the AlphaZero game, and I think you're seeing it, all over the place. There is a huge swathe of positions, that I think starting from just complex strategical positions where there's a mixture of tactics and strategy, and then going all the way up to the really complex ones with a couple of pawns or 3 pawns sacrificed for other advantages like opposite coloured bishops or something like that. That Stockfish does not handle optimally, and these positions, I think we've got used to saying, oh well, Stockfish says that it's good, so it probably will be, and then all of a sudden the NNs are coming along, and that you're sort of discovering that the chessboard's a little bit bigger somehow than you thought it was. There are loads of undiscovered areas still, and loads of things that can be improved in the knowledge that we have, and I mean, that's amazing. It's just amazing.
The other thing is, I was playing poker last night with Jennifer Shahade, and what she particularly liked was the way that AlphaZero and Leela Zero think in terms of expected score rather than number of pawns. She said, if you're a poker player, that's what you'd think. You'd look at your probability of winning the pot any time, and that's obviously the right way to do it. So that's what she said. So it just makes a lot of sense to be able to think directly at a win probability or an expected score, and because some positions are number of pawns, it doesn't help to be so many pawns up.
Yeah. And do you think there's a potential to update opening books, especially for the more strategic openings?
Absolutely. I mean, I've you notice with a lot of opening books. I mean, the quality of books nowadays has never been so high. It's because of course, of all this engine checking of lines. And also, very, very, very strong authors are writing a lot of books nowadays. It's quite amazing. But what you do see in a lot of opening books, you see, a variation given, and then the line at the end has said. A variation given, and then the line at the end has said end, blancation there. But if you're thinking about long-term chances, is that really true? And I do think that I think the strong players, the real professionals, they're going to be the first ones to do this. But to start looking at all these positions which get assessed as equal or engines such as Stockfish and start, really looking at them critically. I mean, I was talking to a very strong English player, and he said, it's really funny because there's so many of those positions where I've thought, no, but come on, Stockfish, you can't be right about this. But then you sort of say, yeah, well, no, I can't really prove it very well that he's wrong, so we might as well go along with it. But knowing that there's another view, I don't agree, that gives you a lot of confidence to trust your own judgment.
I know your Chess for Life book, you mentioned people had their repertoires, and even if the engines thought they were much worse, because they're comfortable with being comfortable with the downsides of openings, I think is important. Because I actually got smashed by Hawkins just a few days ago. I was the sacrificial lamb on board one, but I tried a different plan. I was totally obliterated, and I wish, why didn't they just play c5, allowing d5 in the king's engine like I normally do? I want to do something special, and you can get obliterated like that. But basically, if you know the downsides, even of bad lines, according to Stockfish, you're usually doing well in practice.
Yeah. I mean, we looked at Sergei Tivyakov, who'd played a very strong Russian grandmaster, lives in Holland now. But he played the same opening, this Queen D6 Scandinavian. So he played it for about 7 or 8 years. But he and we did blunder checking of all his games, and Natasha did some lovely statistical analysis of that, and basically discovered that the computer evaluation of virtually all of his games after about 11 moves was plus 0.7 for white, and he was playing black, and yet you saw his score with it. It was incredible.
He did really well.
Yeah, he did really
He
well.
just understood that position inside out, and he was just comfortable playing it.
Yeah, because that evaluation is just Stockfish maybe playing itself, but a human has to have the follow-up. We always have to have the follow-ups, and if we don't have the follow-up, it doesn't apply to us.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, so I mean, I think all this, Leela, AlphaZero, they'll really change, opening theory a lot. I think that's where it'll all start, and then afterwards, well, if you're changing the opening theory, then the middle game positions that you're getting are going to start to change as well. But it always starts I think on the professional level with openings.
Yeah.
It's going to be very exciting. I mean, just think, if we hadn't had this, we'd be missing out on huge amounts of great chess. It's
key question then: can we really apply the style to our own games? Now, I did have a secret disaster I've mentioned to you before, where I tried to play like Leela in the Greenfield, and you sometimes slipped up as well.
While writing the book, yes, I was trying to play like AlphaZero, and perhaps just taking, a chapter at a time, and taking one little bit of what AlphaZero does, and I'd try it out. But I was definitely trying out pushing the H pawn a lot, and sometimes it worked really nicely, and my opponents were like, I hadn't thought of that move. Like, you get to a quiet position and play H4, and I hadn't thought of that. But sometimes I was trying to do this attack and launching my H pawn in there, and actually it probably wasn't the right thing to do in that position. And my teammates, they would gather around and go, what on earth is she playing now?
And you couldn't even say anything either.
And I couldn't tell them. I was saying, I'm playing it for a reason.
And will it adjust your style, do you think, Matthew? When you're playing strong grandmasters, do you think you might be influenced with form pawns a little bit more?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's always tricky, getting stuff into your game. I always remember that I once had a fantastic session with Mark Turetsky, a great Russian coach. But I felt like I learned so much. Actually, the same feeling I've had, looking at AlphaZero's games. But it still took me, sort of 5 or 6 months before I'd assimilated everything and sort of understood it all for myself and understood what I could apply and what I couldn't.
Actually, yeah, I found that many years back. I was checking out Nimzovich, and I tried to play the ideas, and I had the worst pawn structures ever. And I think there's a period you get the concepts on board, but you need to know all the up and down sides firsthand yourself. Integration of those concepts before you get the real benefits without the torture of all the downsides. You need to get a grip on it.
Yeah, I mean, when you have some great coaching or see some great games, you get lots of concepts and lots of ideas, but when you're playing them practically, you have to feel them. You have to feel, this this is really part of me, and but that was the reason why why we wrote the book, and thematically as well, because we really thought these are things that that you can really make part of yourself, and really feel that that you've understood new stuff, and really feel that you can apply them. And I have to say that I really feel that my understanding of positions with pawns sacrificed and opposite coloured bishops and all that sort of stuff, it's really increased enormously. I really feel
and
like
also it's just like really fun trying it out and trying.
It's inspiration,
trying
isn't it?
things. Yeah, like sacrifices, being more willing to sacrifice and saying, well, I don't need to calculate it all. I can. This is just
yes, it's as if Leela's is more chilled out
freedom,
about material. Yeah. It's more chilled out than all the other engines. It's hilariously chilled out. Just give her. It's just an inspiration. It's an inspiration. And there's one thing, actually, you have an example, Carlsbad structure. Usually we think of the minority attack, and AlphaZero is having a new approach sometimes for going in for...
AlphaZero very rarely plays that minority attack.
That's amazing, because that is a classic, iconic...
Yeah. So we had some games, AlphaZero, Stockfish, both sides sort of black and white, and Stockfish would pretty much always play the minority attack. And actually in our previous book, Chess for Life, then... we had a chapter about the Carlsbad and the minority attack, which Keith Arkle still does, champions that style of play. And it's a nice way of playing, but AlphaZero's way of playing is completely different. It doesn't play this attack at all, instead goes for kingside again. And
the really nice thing about its play is on the black side, because generally you sort of think minority attack, if white's attacking on the queen side, then black should be attacking on the king side, but in practice it rarely happens. White attacks on the queen side and black minority attack if white's attacking on minority attack if white's attacking on the... It's one of my favourites, called the Rook's Pawn the Symphony. It's one of my favourites, called the Rook's Pawn the Symphony. It's one of my favourites, called the Rook's Pawn the Symphony. It's one of my favourites, called the Rook's Pawn the Symphony, which was again actually where AlphaZero moves its Rook's Pawn down again actually where AlphaZero moves its Rook's Pawn down to A again actually where AlphaZero moves its Rook's Pawn down. And it's an absolutely beautiful
really
game.
Nice game.
It's a gorgeous game, and and again, it's one of those things. I think that's one of the things that you really notice with AlphaZero. Is that often it's not like the concept is completely unknown. You sort of say, well, if white's attacking on the king side, then black should be on the queen side, then black should be attacking on the king side. But the power with which it manages, and the fact that it manages to do it at all, that's the amazing thing. Because to be honest, if you'd asked me, I would have said, nah, you never manage that. You never manage that. And then you see a game like that, and it's a really gorgeous one. It's really worth seeing.
Yeah. Do you think that the intuition, as we've seen on this recent TSET bonus, on the faster time limit, it's almost a mirror of Magnus Carlsen, because Magnus Carlsen, compared to other grandmasters, when you take him down to bullet, is even more lethal compared to the other GMs.
He's amazing.
Will it be the same with the neural networks, that the faster the time that you think that they'll dominate eventually the AB's engines more?
I think it's a trade-off, because the alpha beta tend to look at more positions per second than the neural nets. So the neural nets have a very good positional idea, and the alpha beta can do the calculations. And so again, in a tactical position, still being able to calculate more positions is going to be a very useful thing. But obviously having good positional sense will help, especially in those positional games.
So it depends on the opening. You're saying that more strategic. You still think it will, a lot comes down to the opening, doesn't it? Really,
I think so. I mean, I think you see one of the big differences. You saw it during the match, AlphaZero against Stockfish, from the starting positions, was that. How we said it. Always talk about these engines like people somehow, but I mean, it's the only way I could really describe it. So these neural nets, they've got a real view on how chess should be played, and I think from the very first move, they've got a clear idea of what do I want to achieve, and it's not that they've got opening theory, but they know the patterns that they're looking for, and what you see is that their opening play from the very first moves really makes sense, whereas you see engines like Stockfish, although they're extremely strong, what you tend to see is that their opening moves are they're not optimal. They're really not optimal, and they don't really fit. They're not really efficient, at very early stages.
I wonder how strong a machine would be if it could do both, though.
Yeah.
If it could do the neural net and the alpha beta and do all those.
Yeah, hybrids are on the way. I mean, what really impresses me about Leela, which the way. I mean, what really impresses me about Leela, which the way. I mean, what really impresses me about Leela, Penrose against Tal the E5 break, but Leela's doing all sorts of Penrose against Tal the E5 break, but Leela's doing all sorts of Penrose against Tal the E5 break.
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that gets more complex and more involved, but positioning where you've got to balance up loads of different things. I mean, that's really where you see the difference. I mean, when we did the World Championship analysis with AlphaZero of the Carson Carana match, I mean, you really saw that the positions where AlphaZero really had a lot to say about. They were the beautifully complex, intricate ones where you needed to have some calculation, but you needed to think ahead, about where do I want my pieces to be in about 5-10 moves time, and that's where these neural nets really make the difference.
I think strongest Stockfish obliterated AlphaZero from an Alekhine Shatard gambit, which I've tried myself with some success. I always thought it's a really dangerous gambit, and it's almost as if it is a kind of advanced chess puzzle in a way, with the king sort of being unsafe. So I think that really is up the street of alpha beta, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you see with AlphaZero is that AlphaZero's great at spotting danger from a very long way off. And as soon as it sees that danger, it's going active, really going active, trying to get its pieces as active as possible. Now, what happened with that Alekhine Shatard is that actually it was already very passive, and it didn't see a single way to get itself active. And then
it really didn't like the position.
Didn't like the
right
position
from the outset. Why am I playing this?
I wouldn't have done this. I wouldn't have Why are you giving me this?
And I mean, hanging on the precipice by the edge of your fingernails, and that's something that Stockfish can do like absolutely no other, and I think that the neural nets, they're not as good at that.
Yes.
But what they're really strong at is seeing a long way before. Do I have long-term prospects in this position? And then they take action on that very early. So actually, you just see that they tend not to get into that sort of trouble actually. But of course, with the when you're put into that opening, then you've got to work with what you got, and in some of those positions, Stockfish was a lot more successul.
Yeah, because it basically gets positions where it doesn't have to be a tactical genius. It's always trying to make the position easier to play for itself. So that's what I find kind of amusing as well.
Yeah,
I don't get those positions. I don't need to be that good tactically.
No, it's true. I mean, in our book we compared it to an awful lot of players, but one that really appealed to me actually was Bot Vinick. Because Bot Vinick was, he was for these grand strategical schemes where he'd like, try and, kind of plan the whole game out, from the opening, and he was very into, especially with the white pieces, fixing the centre, and then playing on the wings, playing on both wings, and it's really nice, really nice to think about it, because Kasparov was saying that Bot Vinick, when he was he was world champion, but he was also a computer scientist, and he was trying to build this self-learning machine. So it's lovely that his that you start thinking, his style resembled the self-learning machine that's really become strong. I mean, that was quite a nice little thought.
I didn't like he described Kotov as a parallel project, teaching grandmasters to think like computers. But Kotov was all about variation trees. I really was kind of cynical about that think like grandmaster. But I prefer Nimzovich, my system, or the strategic books have always been my preference to books which try and get you to calculate like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's good calculation is obviously really important, but it's I think you've got to be able to do the Kotov method sometimes. But
wasn't he the one that said you only calculate each line once?
And once only.
You can't go back.
Except
check
if you're sacking your queen, I'm a bit cynical about that as well. What if you got this heavy queen sack? Surely you should do a huge.
No, I mean, It is true. I mean, actually, the way that humans think, I think, is that you think of a variation, and that feeds ideas into others. So obviously, you're going to hop around and do that. But I think I think Kosol's point about being disciplined in calculation and really trying to make sure that you've considered as many of the opponent's possibilities as possible. All that's very useful. But yeah, obviously, he took it quite far with his tree of analysis.
I think it's great for forcing moves because they're low cost to us as humans. Our strength is not really calculation; it's more concepts for me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So but I do value looking at all the forcing variations, and even for that though, I think it's nice to identify tactical liabilities, loose pieces, overloaded, and then that helps you calculate and stimulates you to calculate further.
Yeah.
And so I think Konsol was a bit cold on that. He didn't even talk about those. You should be. Maybe he did. I misread, but I prefer the conceptual books.
Yeah. No, I mean it's actually to be honest, the older I get, the fewer variations I like actually, and the more concepts you like. It's because that there's a limited amount of from a practical point of view during a game you'll be able to see a limited amount, and it's more thinking of ideas and having creative ideas about how you should put. You'll be able to see a limited amount, and it's more thinking of ideas. You'll really try and get there, but
I wonder if the structure of your brain has changed in those years.
That's possible.
that you just find the positional stuff more easy. So I wonder if we learn a bit about the brain from all these kind of projects.
Well, isn't our brain more like an advanced neural network?
Much yeah. It's like a neural net, and so we do that kind of thinking about this on balance. This kind of position will be good, and this will be less good. But I'm thinking as you go throughout your life, you do it more and more like that, and less like calculating. So I wonder if you turn like. As a young player, you're a bit like a stockfish, calculating everything, and then as you get involved, you become a bit more like an AlphaZero or a Leela.
Yeah. But building up the intuition, I mean, Magnus Carlsen's intuition for bullet chat is phenomenal. He just has this instinct.
He's amazing.
That's not calculating. He's just got this instinct, isn't it, from the patterns?
Yeah, no, Magnus is fantastic. He's
got the hybrid. Yeah.
Yes, and he's good tactically as well. The forcing is there.
No, I mean he does things that you really you can't think that anyone else can really do. He's an amazing player, really amazing.
So the most interesting aspects for me, I just think it's this casual style it's got, not caring too much about losing pawns, which aligns to me. Making the position easy to play and easy to think about, which aligns to me being lazy. I like that. Yeah, it's got this lazy mentality. I love the whole mentality, the whole what it symbolises. If it aligns to you, that really helps. What about you there? So I think so your absolute top favourite aspects then?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what I loved about AlphaZero was actually the whole board play. I think that's the point. The idea that that things can happen. That there's that game Exactly How to Attack. That was the game that really stood out for us. Where actually AlphaZero offers 7 pawn sacrifices in total. But the weird thing is that it sacrifices 2 pawns on the king side and then moves over to the queen side and then the centre and then there's a number of tactics where the finishing move is on the queen side and then it moves over to the king side again and that sort of you see that sort of play in some great attacking games from time to time from Tal or Kasparov, but with AlphaZero you get so many of them.
That Bishop A6 variation.
Yeah, that Bishop A6. That's right.
There's a symphony on every part. I love the symphony concept. Yeah, the whole board's a symphony, it's like orchestra.
And that's something that that's something you'd really like to learn for yourself. To learn just to be able to just sit back and look at the whole board and see. Just sit back and look at the whole board and see things happening on the whole board. Just sit back and look at the whole board and see things. Just sit back and look at the whole board and see things happening on the whole. A moment where I was desperately looking for the way. A moment where I was desperately looking for the way. A moment where I was desperately looking for the way. and I just thought, whole board vision, Matthew, come on, but that's often that's really key, that that you see different angles for your pieces to activate yourself. You're looking for a way to activate your pieces, and you look over the whole board, not just that narrow area where you're focusing.
And one of my foreign CL games as well was I wanted to do the strategy of where their queenside pieces don't ever get out and get stuck at home. Because I think AlphaZero's, like, its mobility, it restricts the opponent's pieces, and it maybe gives up something for that, or at least that's the focus. And once those pieces are still at home, it can swap the other pieces. And I like that. It's sort of quite a simple strategy that it'll swap off the active pieces and then leave the opponent with the pieces that are still at home. And I think that you sort of can incorporate that into your game.
Oh, definitely. Like the C8 bishop in the Queen's Indian, it's tortured that C8 bishop to keep that as an imprisoned piece. Quite so often, I thought, in that original match. And just Stockfish is just unaware of that issue, that it's got this spectator piece, C8 bishop.
Or it's just I guess simply that it takes Stockfish just a little bit longer to to gather all the evidence. I mean, actually, it reminds me very much of I was talking with another player, with I think Predrag Nikolic, and Grandmaster, and talking about difference between what's the difference between me and Kramnik, and just sort of thought, thing about Kramnik is, when he looked at the position, it was like he only needed one piece to see one thing about the position, and he could tell you straight away, that's great. Whereas I needed to gather all the evidence, see all the things, and then finally I'd say, that's better. And you have that feeling sometimes with some of the games between AlphaZero and Stockfish, where AlphaZero is going early for this is very good for white, and Stockfish sees it but later, or he sees it less extreme, and you really have the feeling that there's that sort of that difference in terms of the amount of evidence that you need in order to understand whether a position is good or bad. And in chess, for humans, you see that as talent. You see that reflected as talent.
The Grandmaster can just look at the board in a second and will know, whereas an amateur player, you'd list the bits, wouldn't you? And you'd say, don't know who's better yet, but I'm a pawn up or something like that. And that would be how you do it.
And at a high level,
but also AlphaZero and Stockfish evaluate in a different way, and AlphaZero, we think, takes a lot of different things into account in making its assessment, and gets quite a quick view of whether a position's good or not.
From a self-learning perspective, so do you think as it beats itself, it's qualifying the concepts more to make them even better, do you think, when it beats itself?
I think when it beats itself, it sort of compares how it thought it would do with certain moves with then how it actually did, and then kind of reinforces the things where it's different from what it thought it would be. If that then led to a win, then it'll go sort of slightly scale its view towards that thing that's recently given a win.
I mean, it's just it's quite amazing to think that over the 44 million games it plays against itself and all that just all that refinement of all those of all those ideas that must be taking place. Incredible.
I suppose your question is sort of, is it refining positional ideas, like a bishop does this and a rook does that, and we don't know that. I think it has a kind of view of the whole board.
Yes, is that a slight downside? We don't really know what it's learnt from one network to another, or where it's got a new content. We're not tracking how it understands things very easily.
We need a person there to kind of say, this is what's happening in this game, so this is what it's thinking.
I mean, we're just seeing its moves and saying, it must be thinking that,
But maybe a slight downer is there's so many different network IDs of Leela. How would anyone running an online server now know if someone's cheating or not? There's like 6,000 different IDs they could have been using. Is it going to be harder to detect online?
And if
issues?
It's playing human-like, can you tell if it's a human? That's true. It could be harder.
We're going to end up playing with cameras and everything.
Yes.
There's not going to be online prize storm as much. I mean, that's people. It's going to be difficult, isn't it? Because there's no way to sort of know anymore.
It's always it's always the risk, isn't it, with those things, But I mean, whether it's legal,
it's going to be difficult, isn't it? Because there's no way to sort of know.
I mean, for the book, I was. I mean, for the book, I was. I mean, for the book, I was trying to beat King. Absolutely amazing. What a strength.
Yeah.
It's makes you realise how good AlphaZero and Leela are to actually defeat this guy.
Okay, so key question. This amazing book, which is a good candidate for Book of the Year. I'm thinking people have been saying that a lot.
We'll see the early days.
So if you want to vote this book of the year, that'd be great. So what are the best places? Where are the best places to buy this book?
You can buy it in lots of places, actually. And so there's, if you want to buy paper copies, there's Chess and Bridge, New in Chess.
Amazon.
Yeah, I got mine
and
from Amazon actually.
Waterstones now it's in.
Waterstones, excellent.
And Smiths, I think you can get it in. So lots of places. And what's the big American?
Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble. So lots of different places.
Excellent.
There's also a number of different electronic variations as well. So Kindle. There's also a very nice one.
Forward chess.
Forward chess
is
where you can move the pieces as you play, so you can just sort of click forward and back and see the analysis.
It's very nice. I got a lot of books with forward chess. It's very nice, and there's also Chessable as well, which is with puzzles as well.
Like the puzzles.
The puzzle
so
format.
you can kind of play the game, and then it'll test you whether you've remembered or whether you can work out what the next moves were in the sequence.
Excellent.
Yeah. So yes, quite actually, it's one of those things that you don't really realise, but people have been so creative with the with the whole thing. It's just wow. So that's amazing.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys. This has been a really fantastic, awesome experience. I hope you enjoyed.
Thank you.
We've had a lovely time.
Is it
Kingscrusher.
Kingscrusher? Is that because you crush a lot of different
the
kings?
original nickname was taken on ICC, and I had to get Kings instead of Kingcrusher. It was originally, it was just.
You were originally Kingcrusher.
Oh, I tried. The ICC handle was just taken,
but it was taken already.
Yeah.
So there's another king. So there's a Kingcrusher and a Kingscrusher. And have you met Kingcrusher?
No. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. I hope you guys have enjoyed this off-the-cuff commentary discussion and everything else. Okay, and great.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.